Our show again, and it's good to be back here in Singapore. And today we have a great speaker and as well as book author. His name is Andrew Grant. Andrew Grant is the CEO of Titan and a co-author of breakthrough new book Who Killed Creativity. And of course, this one of his great print books, and you must get hold of it. And Andrew Grant, thank you for joining us here in Singapore. For saying hi to the National Business Voice News. Tell us though, what actually inspired you to create this wonderful book, Who Killed Creativity? Did anyone kill creative knowledge or juices and all that kind of thing?
Well, that's a great question. I'd like to start by saying what inspired me on creativity and then why the negative theme.
Yeah.
So I think what inspired me on the importance of creativity is watching my children become creative. And as I got older, I realised my kids were creative and I was losing that creativity. Even though my background was in education, I was teaching and designing things, our children can just come up with ideas like that. And yet as adults, we struggle to come up with it. So that got me thinking about the importance of creative thinking, and we can't lose that because the statistics show that 98% of children have divergent thinking. That's the ability to take two ideas and put them together. But only 2% of adults have that.
Really?
Yeah. So that got me thinking what happened. Now the next thing is the crime. If we all enter school creative and we exit school uncreative, or we enter the workforce not so creative, what's gone wrong? So we started with the concept that, and we've surveyed people, thousands of people around the world, asking them, do they think they were creative in kindergarten? 90% of people put their hands up. And then we asked the same people, as an adult, do they think they're more or less creative in kindergarten? Most people say they're less. So we're seeing creativity
really
decline as people get older.
No,
My question is, who killed it?
Yeah,
What happened?
Yeah, but is it true? It could be the society or the system or even the school education that caused the creative environment to be non-conclusive.
That's right.
And also it could be the employers themselves. But how can one recover and able to gain back their creative, juice, as they call it,
Mojo.
Yeah, or mojo they call it. Could you
Well, I think, before we work out how one can recover it, we need to work out what's stopping us. So we use the metaphor of crime scene. Who killed it? It's not necessarily a murder. You could say anything, but if we take away the metaphor, the question is, what's stopping us from being creative? Is it fear? So we've got these characters and the cards. We play it as a game. Is it fear? Is it control? Is it apathy? Once we've identified in our lives the things that are holding us back from being creative, then we can learn to work out how to not listen to those voices. For example, we hear in a meeting someone saying, "Oh, we tried that last year, it didn't work." Well, that's the voice of apathy or pessimism saying, we need to recognise it and say, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try again." So we must, to bring creativity back in, the first thing we have to do is identify what's killing it or blocking it, and learn to move those people away or keep away from them, or not people, but fictitious characters. We can also realise that if fear is the thing that's struggling, which is what we saw today, most people said that fear was the thing they were struggling with. Well, we also have then, as our cards, we have rescuers, which is the second half of the book. So the first half of the book is who killed it, the second half is how to get it back. So once you've identified what the killers are in your life, then you can start matching up with the rescuers.
Oh, wow.
So what is the thing, what is going to help rescue us from fear? What's going to help rescue us from pessimism? So for example, pessimism, what's going to help rescuing us is the courage to have an optimistic mindset. So how do we change the way we think that allows us to get back up and try again? Because we know that creative people are optimistic. We all fail, but a creative person, when they fail, they fall down and then they get back up again.
Wow.
A pessimistic person, when they fail, they don't get back up.
But how does one be optimistic and pessimistic?
That's a mindset, and that can be from birth. It can be a genetic, a neuroscience, maybe predisposition. It can be an environment. It could be a school teacher. It could be a parent telling you either you're no good, give up, or a parent or a school teacher continually saying, you know, you're good, let's try again. So we are definitely conditioned and by the environment to be pessimistic or optimistic, for example. What we do know is that a pessimistic mindset or culture will kill creative thinking, and an optimistic mindset or culture will allow creative thinking to flourish. The reason being is because an optimist will always look for new solutions, different solutions.
Now, isn't it true that it is by choice? If I'm not born to be optimist or even a pessimist, we could choose. Is there such a thing?
Look, I think that's the lifelong question, nurture or nature, or are we born or can we learn it? It's the same question with creative thinking. Are people born creative and others not? I think it's easy but dangerous to black and white that. I think to a degree maybe like some people are born tall and some people are born short, they may be more likely to flourish with creative thinking, but I believe it is something we can learn or it is something we can unlearn. And depending on the environment we're in to a degree.
So if I have an environment where I'm answering to my boss and my boss is breathing fire on me every now and then, I develop this kind of fear. How can I be convinced that I could do more than just obeying his orders, and able to apply the principle of gaining his or her confidence in leadership that this can be done? So the question really is, how do I overcome fear, and how do I present myself in a positive, optimistic manner to the management?
Okay, so that's a great question, because I think a lot of people might find themselves in that situation. They want to be creative, but someone above them, boss, parent, teacher, is threatening them. So I think the first thing is to understand the process and realise that it's not necessarily you being uncreative, but that environment. In this case, it's our as one of our murderers, our control person, is making our environment very difficult to be creative, because there's people putting pressure on us, putting deadlines on us. If we don't recognise that, we will just let it get us down. If we can recognise that, we can, as I said, without pointing the finger at the boss, we can say, these things are in my environment, then it becomes easier to not feel threatened by it. We can ride above it. What is the antidote for control? Well, we believe it's courage. It's the courage to overcome that oppressive, because control is oppressive. It squashes you down, it wants to put you into a box. So how do we overcome that? We have to develop courage. How do we develop courage? We have to ask questions. We have to continually asking ourselves, is there another way to do it? Even though the boss says, no, this is the only way, we have to cultivate curiosity. And just as a boss can come in and bring control and kill creativity, you as an employee, by asking questions, by cultivating curiosity, by showing courage, can also help people become more creative. The people around you, you may not have the direct control the boss has, but you can still influence people around you. And if they're feeling in a controlled environment, perhaps they can develop the courage to not do that.
Now, what is influence and innovation to you?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, what is the definition of influence?
Well, I think everyone can influence each other. As I said, obviously if you're in a hierarchical position, it's easier as the boss to influence down. But that doesn't mean you can't influence up. You can't share your creative ideas with other people and then get other people to feel that they can be creative. Because once one person starts thinking creatively, you'll find that other people. So in our book, we've designed a game. It's who killed creativity, where was it killed, and with what weapon. A bit like the Cluedo or Clue game, or Risk in America it's called. And so you talked about where. Well, we have different places on a board game, from the CEO's office to sales and marketing, to the toilet, to the playground. In Apple's case, it was the garage where it was creative. A lot of creative companies have grown out of a garage. So we ask people, where do they think creativity has died, and where is it most flourishing within the company? So what we see is that the research shows that creativity often flourishes in the most non-formal places.
Really?
In the playground, in the coffee shop, in the bathroom, around the coffee cooler, or drinks at night, or in the subconscious.
Really?
In the subconscious brain when
Not
you're asleep.
not in the office.
No, because in the office you're getting interrupted by emails all the time. Now, one of our creative killers is pressure, and one of those sub ones is stress or multitasking. If you're constantly being interrupted by emails, Your brain takes 25 minutes to get back into a state of flow, meaning to get into a creative mode, normally it takes about 25 minutes. Now, if you're checking your emails every 24 minutes, or you're being interrupted under 25 minutes, you never get into a state of flow. So people can go through the whole day, starting with checking emails before they go to work, the whole day not in a state of creative consciousness because they're being interrupted. So no, I ask people where do they have their most creative moments? In the shower, on holidays, while driving, while washing the car. Because that's when your brain goes into a non-conscious process thinking, and that's where the creativity moments. So when we play our game and we ask people where is creativity most likely to flourish, they don't say at my work desk. So if we're not providing those opportunities, if we're not allowing people to take time out, creativity will be hard to flourish.
Wow, amazing revelation.
Well, that's why workplaces struggle, because we're not creating physical, mental, or social environments for people to be creative.
Now, is it true that the more holidays one takes, the more creative they get?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
I wonder how employers feel that way.
Well, that's right. It's
what kind of challenges do employers see?
Well, I mean, that's a bit extreme to say everyone can take longer holidays, but we have got research in our book that the more people travel, the more creative they are.
Yeah.
The more exposed they are to other cultures, the more creative they are.
Yes.
So that would come down to, and one of our killers is called narrow-minded mob. So the more exposed you are. But we've worked with lawyers that bill in 6-minute intervals and they don't get a time to breathe. And we actually challenged one of the biggest companies in the world, their whole team of lawyers, that they should have downtime. That they should stop the 6-minute billing. And the boss got up and said, after lunch, we're going to have a short downtime. Because he recognised without that downtime, people are not going to come up with new ideas. And by creativity, I don't mean painting. I mean coming up with better solutions, faster solutions, cheaper solutions, solutions where other people are not looking, newer solutions.
Wow.
But most companies don't allow that because we're just too busy working.
Well, either they're too busy or it's because the hierarchy doesn't allow it.
That's right.
So another question for you is, how do people even overcome those hierarchies? Hierarchies who are difficult, who are probably reserved to new ideas. How does one even do you have any research on that?
Yes, I've got personal experience. We often work with, we're out here in Asia and many of the companies we work with are headquartered in America or Europe. And so we get comments like, well, this is great, but we can't even sneeze without getting permission from headquarters. And so they're feeling trapped. So then again, looking at who killed creativity, well, it's not even on the game board, it's out there, out of our control.
Yeah.
So look, this comes back to Stephen Covey's concept of the circle of influence. What can we influence? So I want to ask my teams that I work with, okay, so we can't control headquarters, we've got this bureaucracy. Bureaucracy is not a bad thing, it keeps companies going, but it's not conducive to creative thinking. So what can we do within our team? Sure, we may want to change the whole structure of a place, and often I work with CEOs and they will change the structure. But then I won't work with CEOs, I'm working with a junior team, and we have to look at what can they do to overcome control, fear, how can they bring in courage and passion and optimistic mindset in order to resurrect themselves, I suppose.
Yes. And folks, please do not forget to get hold of this book by Andrew Grant and by Gary Grant, Who Killed Creativity? And it's available at all leading bookstores as well as online. And Mr. Andrew, another challenge is this: how does one able to I know that it is a challenge to get the leadership to more reserve and to comply with new ideas and so on. Now let's turn the tables around. How can management learn to let go? Management, they've trained their staff and they become really great, and sometimes they kind of accustomed to their warmth,
Well, I'd go even further than that, and the research is showing that we've had to document is that as companies, all companies start off creative.
Yes.
Apple, Microsoft, Google, they all start off creative. but they inevitably move towards that bureaucracy and control model, and most companies will die after 3 generations, or a certain Dr. Jeffrey West has looked at they die at a certain money limit. I can't remember exactly what it was, but once they reach a certain amount of money, all 3 generations they die. So they go through a natural cycle, starting creative and then becoming bureaucratic and control and then dying off as a result of that. So the question is, the companies that reinvent themselves can see that growth and death curve, and as they're entering that phase of bureaucracy and control, they realise that either they will be leading towards death, or they must do a major shake-up or innovation. And this is where the concept of disruptive innovation comes in. So the companies that can see into the future, I mean the conference we're at the moment is about creating or inventing the future. The companies that can see into the future and realise that, you know, down the road maybe we won't be having hard copies of books. We'll be, as we're seeing, I mean,
yes.
You know, Amazon's now scaring publishing companies. Well, they have no choice but to innovate. They innovate or die. Now, when we first started running these sessions 15 years ago, these sort of sessions were a luxury. Now let's do creative thinking because we've done all our other sessions. We've done negotiation and sales 101, and we've done our team building. What else can we do in a conference? But now what we're seeing is that companies are realising if they don't embrace the creative process, they will be left behind. And these waves, because of the technology, one of the questions I challenge my clients is, what happens if Google or Facebook decides to wake up one day and enter your industry? And they are the proactive companies that are going to say, wow, we need to look at what we're good at and be creative. The ones that don't, we'll see them in the graveyard.
Now, does this apply even for department heads as well? You know, I mean, the department heads, you know, they employ their staff, they train their staff, and after that, all of a sudden, you know, they begin to see that their staff are going to just take off, you know, to other companies, and yet the head of the company feels that no, please don't leave me. You know, I mean, I've done so much for you. Why should you leave my department and go elsewhere? You know, you should be happy here. How can we convince the leadership, you know, of the department that it is a good thing?
Well, I think there's much research to show that people don't just go to work for money. We like to think that, but they need a self-fulfillment. If they're using their strengths, what they're good at, they will feel much more fulfilled at work, and therefore they'll enjoy it. I mean, they spend so much time at work. So the question is, if people are feeling, and we all like to create, you know, from kids building sandcastles to adults to drawing, if we're feeling part of that creative process, if we're feeling part of contributing to the bigger picture, even in a little way, we're more likely to stay. The companies that are turning staff over left, right and centre, their staff don't feel part of a bigger picture. They don't feel part of that growth. And so by the department heads allowing people to contribute with some creative ideas. The other reason why it's important for the department heads to contribute for some creative ideas is some of the best ideas come from the most junior staff. And we're in a hotel right now. I didn't meet the general manager when I came, I met the doorman. I bet he's got some fantastic ideas about how to improve the process of people coming in and out and getting taxis. I wonder if he ever has the opportunity to share those creative ideas with the executive committee in the hotel. Often not. So you've got so many people down at the coalface working directly with the customer that probably out of frustration want to share creative ideas but don't necessarily have the process. If the leaders would only wake up and allow those people to share those ideas. But again, that's why these creative killers are lurking around the organisation, stopping us doing that. So we have to deal with the killers and then bring back in the rescuers.
And at the same time, they should also learn to let go.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's control.
Yeah,
see, they won't let go because that control character has got them.
Yeah.
And so they feel they can't let go because they're worried about letting go. Particularly if, you know, we're in Singapore, you know, people feel that it's a sign of disrespect to question your leaders from the education system. It's a loss of face if leaders ask a junior person how they think they would do it. And yet that's the model that needs to change. We need to be asking everyone out there, is there another way to do it? But so there's a cultural issue there as well.
As well as for the juniors who leave the company and they feel that it's also a loss of face for them. Is that right?
Yes, there's a loss of face. People, you know, unless we've got an environment where people feel comfortable to talk. and people have a great idea, but they can't share it, they'll go somewhere else. Or you know what, they'll share it, but they'll share a dinner at night over drinks, and they'll probably share it in a very negative fashion. One example we used is when we played the game, we asked every table to tell us where they think creativity was killed. This is a company based here. Every single table independently agreed that creativity was killed in the coffee shop.
Really?
Now that is so different to a company like Google, where Google encouraged people to go to the coffee shop because they believe that's where the ideas will come. What this company was doing is everyone was going to the coffee shop and having a bitch, having a gossip, and no one knew how to deal with it. Once we played the game, the CSI game, we identified that was the issue, and the CEO went, now I know what to look at. See if I can get a change in culture. But you just compare two companies like Google, which is one of the most creative companies in the world, where everyone goes to the coffee shop and they're told to stay on, to other companies where they all go to complain. That's the cultural thing. Now, who would you rather work with? A company where it's fun to go to the coffee shop and be creative and even stay after work, or a company where everyone goes to the coffee shop and is pessimistic in the coffee shop with a weapon of noxious negativity? They're the cultures that we're seeing.
What lessons can you impart, maybe three key points if you could give based on your book on how leadership can recognize, as well as even the junior ones, that they should not be afraid to bring their creative ideas out in the open, but be subtle, of course, and discreet to one another without having any offense, but yet it is fruitful for the environment.
Look, I think leaders have to pay a lot more attention to the environment. There's definitely a time for a leadership to take control. In an emergency situation, you don't have time to ask people what they think. But too many leaders live in an emergency situation 24 hours a day. I think we need to be understanding as leaders when we're making decisions, are we growing creativity within our group by asking them what they think, or are we shutting it down? And often we're not aware, as we go through life as leaders, we're not aware of the environment that we create with us or that we bring with us as we travel through life. So we've been in a session where ironically the leader engaged us to run a creativity session with his team. The team then spent all day coming up with hundreds of ideas, really, really good ones, but some very bad ones. But that's okay, because you only need one good one to turn a company around. And he came back in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He sat, and I could see, he looked around the room, and his face just went pale white, because he thought, oh, this is a lot of work. And he sat in the middle of the room like this. And the first table got up to present. And they were all excited and enthusiastic. And he just sat there like this. And within about 10 minutes, by the time the last table got up to present, they were scared. So within 10 minutes, that leader's attitude towards the group, that he asked us to do creative thinking, was destroyed. Just by his body language. Just by his lack of emotion, by his lack of empathy with what people are doing.
Wow. And what is leadership to you today? What's the definition?
Well, I think leadership is facilitating a group to bring out the best in the group. I think we need to move away from the leader as the expert that knows everything to the leader that is able to bring out the expertise within its group. And when I say expertise, that could be bringing out creativity as well. Because our expertise now, the greatest knowledge lies within the team. As I said, being in this hotel, I bet the doorman knows more about the processes that happen in the morning than the guy that sits in his office. A great leader will bring that out and then facilitate that process to make the system more efficient and more effective.
Amazing, and that's going to work out very well, vice versa as well, if there's a good interchange.
Yes. Well, it's about, as I said, it's about, back to this, it's about removing the blockages so people can feel they can talk about these issues. Right now, people are so paralysed, they probably want to talk about them, but they don't feel they can.
Well, thank you for sharing with us, Andrew. And thank you for being with us here at